I'm going to open the meeting of the Manchester MBTA zoning task force. On February 8th at 6:32, and I'll take a roll call. Let's see, Denny.
Here.
Andy.
Here.
And just walked in.
Not quite here. Almost here. Almost.
Sarah.
Here.
Richard. Here. And Sue Philbrick, who's maybe on Zoom. Sue. I should know she has COVID. And Michael Pratt. Michael.
Mike Pratt.
Yep, that's me.
Okay.
Michael's there, okay. Okay, so we have a quorum, so let's get started. First item on the agenda is acknowledgement of receipt of correspondence, and we have emails from Mr. Giovanni on February 26th and 27th, and on February 1st. Next thing is updated schedule, and I think everyone's got a copy of it. Since the short-term schedule, we're going to long-term schedule. So what's happening over the next couple of weeks are some subcommittee meetings and the communications subcommittee meeting next week. And one on the 12th as well. And we're trying to schedule a meeting to discuss environmental impacts. And another one with business interests in the downtown stakeholders. We don't have dates for that yet. So let's turn to, anyone have any questions about the schedule?
Is this schedule we talking about?
No, that's another schedule. The regular MBTA schedule.
Yeah. It's really.
Oh, there's Gar. Oh, I'm sorry, Gar. I didn't forget to mention your name. Gar is here.
Yeah. It's funny for everybody too.
Yeah, we can find it. We don't find that in the fields. Oh, the design, that's right, it's on the design guideline for the 16th. Okay, so the next item is to talk about long-term planning. Yeah, shorter term, but then the long-term planning. So Mark was going to put together a schedule for us to get us to the end of the game. So fire away, Mark.
It started at the bottom. And I worked my way back up.
That's a good way to do it.
And so I projected we have town meeting November 1st or later. So the planning board would have to hold its public hearings in October, and we have two meetings on the 8th and the 22nd. I figured that we ought to keep both those dates open in case there was a reason to have two, or in case there was mistakenly advertising, we had to re-advertise it, as we have some time to do that. So if you go back up, in order to meet that advertising, we would have to have the planning board submit the final version to the select board on September 9th, so it could be voted and resubmitted to the planning board by the select board on September 16th. Yep. So I once the package comes back from EOHLC, I have one meeting, one planning board meeting on August 26th, and of course the final review, in which they have to vote on September 9th. So you kind of have two meetings to review it and get some comments before you send it to the select board. If you get the comments back on the 19th from EOHLC, you would have to submit it to EOHLC on or about May 18th. That's your 90 days. So the planning board is meeting on the 13th of May, in which they could review the final version and vote to put a submission to EOHLC, which means the joint meetings between the planning board and the MBTA would have to occur in April, and we have the 8th and the 22nd.
Okay,
So that kind of gives us a beginning point.
okay, so it looks like we have to be pretty much done with what our recommendation by April 8th.
To at least present it to the board, and even if it means we have a couple meetings still with
We
the
have
board to refine it.
So we have a month of April to work with the planning board to get this into a package
Mhm.
that we could then submit to EOHLC on May
Why
18th.
we change the name to that?
So,
Well, I just do HLC, there's something about the EO that makes it.
Yeah, right.
difficult. Yeah.
What happens if EOHLC doesn't approve?
They're just giving comments.
they're gonna
Yeah.
get comments, so.
This is the preliminary.
They don't say yay or nay, I don't think.
I
They
think
just
they
say,
just give.
Well, nonetheless, if they give comments, they're basically giving comments that says you didn't pass and we've got to do something.
Right.
Which means that we would be, depending on what those comments were, in some kind of negotiation with ourselves to try and figure out how it's gonna, yeah, so that's,
Yeah, so it looks like we have from August 19th to September 9th. to do that.
but. So I maybe this is the process, and maybe you could explain. So it comes back, let's suppose they have some major comments. Now. We're probably, if we could just say, all right, we're gonna do exactly what you told us to do. And in which case, I guess we would know that we're gonna be compliant. But what if we didn't want to do that? Now we're kind of stuck. I'm
Now
just
we're-
curious, what happens then?
We call Emily. Say,
Who do we blame?
if we make these changes, do you think they'll pass?
Yeah,
I mean, that's what we have to do.
do towns actually enter into negotiations with the housing hub?
I have sat not on any pre-application reviews yet, but I have sat on a couple of conversations where the town has a question about a direction. And we've talked with HLC. Generally, the town has wanted some form of relaxation and the answer has been to date no. But certainly I have also asked questions where I say, look, it looks like we're going in this direction, or we'd like to explore this. I will say that generally they're pretty good, but right now, because we're reviewing all the rapid communities, I mean, it's taking a little bit longer than usual to get an answer. But yeah, I can always reach out and say, in fact, there's little things on what I'm going to show you tonight where I might end up reaching out before we go too much further, but I want to talk it over with you all first before I go too much. So
it seems to me that though we call this a pre-application, for all practical purposes, this is the application. Because if we go to town meeting.
Yeah.
We've got to know that we are gonna
Right.
pass.
yeah, I've got a couple of spring town meetings where we're not gonna get an answer or a review back from HLC before we go to town meeting. But with you being able to do it entirely before fall, that makes a big difference, so.
I look at these dates and the big gap in this list of dates is between May 18th and August 19th, which appears to be about 3 months.
Right.
And we've been operating on a tight time frame. And suddenly, somehow or other, 3 months has been wedged into our time frame.
That's how long they take.
Well, that is my question.
That's what they told us.
The commissars in Boston have decided that they need that much time, 3 months, to review this application for this piddling little town.
Yeah, but they could have 170 other
Oh,
ones at the same time.
There's no question. They might have, who knows what.
Not more than 170.
Not, that could be the limit. Yeah, but my question is, is there any way for us to explain to them? And I realize we're not the only ones, but to say to them, we're trying to do a good job here.
We're special.
If everybody is non-special. That could be. No, I think we are operating in good faith. Some applicants may not be, I don't know. But I guess what I would say, is there any chance we could say to them, if we get you the package by May 18th, is there a chance that by the end of June, we could hear back from you? Because that'll make a big difference to the viability of our effort.
So,
Yeah,
Well, as Richard just said, if they have comments that we then have to vet,
yeah,
then that may take a little extra time, and we don't have any extra time here.
I'm sure they put down within that 3-month window.
Oh, in other words, they will comment to us within the 3-month window?
I would expect, I mean, first of all, we're paying her to make sure we don't go too far off the reservation, Carl. I know that's a hard concept.
I'm in favor of that.
Second, correct me if I'm wrong, but during that period, if they have issues, wouldn't we hear from them informally, or wouldn't you hear from them informally?
I don't know, the reason being, they were taking close to 90 calendar days, so it's calendar, not business, that is important to know. For the relatively recent ones, but that was with the 12 rapid transit communities coming up in a very short period of time. My only concern about your request, because I would assume so, it'd be like, hey, oh, we just got this application from Manchester, and we see this thing. Why have you not told us about this thing so far? You know, so either you or I or the town or all of us would get something potentially. But the only thing that worries me is that for the spring town meetings, most of them will be wrapping up in late May, early June. So even though obviously the town meeting, the zoning has to go to the AG, they'll probably be readying they may wait till the AG has reviewed it before readying their submissions. But anybody who hasn't already done their review is probably gonna get it in pretty quickly after your town meeting, so that they have the fall town meeting to correct anything, so. Now, having said that, remember that they did give sample zoning out for communities to use. And so the closer we are to that sample zoning, where they can go down and say tick, 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 tick. You shouldn't use that as we're only going to do this, we're gonna do the sample zoning, not because it fits us, but because HLC will tick off on it. Don't do it that way, but if we can keep it as close as possible to the sample zoning or to the structure of the sample zoning, that will make it easy, that should make it easier to review.
And if we think we're off the reservation, I assume we could,
Oh, yeah, I would start.
Say again, Chris?
if we were going off the reservation, we could alert them that this is an issue we want resolved.
You know, my concern about all this is, and I guess there's nothing we can do about it, but on the one hand, we want to take advantage for our town of everything that we can take advantage of. And on the other hand, if we do that, we run the risk of running afoul because we didn't follow their formula. So this 3 months imposes yet another pressure point on us to meet some kind of a generic standard.
I mean, my concern about the schedule is, I'm hoping that we can, when we left the meeting the last time, we were talking about June 15th, which seemed like a big push as it was, and it's gone back 1 month. And I think the more talk and thought and discussion that happens up front prior to submitting anything, the more likely the product we have is going to be acceptable both to the citizens of the town and to the state. So I'm a little worried about the May 18th date as opposed to 1 more month.
So, during those 90 days, that's when we can hold forums for the public, where we inform the public and not just hold the forum, but take our show on the road is what I've done in the past, where I've gone to the senior center and I've gone to the school committee meetings and I've gone to several other boards and commissions where it presented what's been being proposed. So here it's not quite final yet, but we can present what's been submitted to EOHLC. In the final version, I mean, I'm expecting, based on how the discussion went at the last meeting, which I left feeling pretty good about, how we were framing the proposal, that we should, aside from how strict is our design guidelines and how we put that in, that we may be able to have a level of comfort of what we submit will probably be approved with some adjustments. And it depends how strict we want the design working over the next few weeks. Maybe 2 months, we can kind of feel out the state on that.
So Mark, you're saying that it's within our power to craft up a submission that is fairly likely to get approved? I don't know. Is that kind of right? Is that?
So I'm not so worried about that, but people do like very much to have an opportunity to comment and to comment early. And we've been kind of knocking ourselves out, doing forums and walks and providing FAQs and so on and so forth. And I think if we send something to HLC without there having been sufficient opportunity for people to comment, I think that's a mistake.
Well, I agree, but I think even after we submit it, we shouldn't do nothing for 90 days.
Oh,
Because
right.
then you kind of fall out of the, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's why I think that's when you shop your proposal around.
Let's-
So
let me
that
ask
makes it easier at the end.
Let me ask you a question about this November 1 date. Suppose worst comes to worst and it doesn't pass.
Mhm.
We're not gonna get it through this year.
Well,
No, just, what would we do if it didn't pass?
oh,
And it was November 1? We're not gonna get another town meeting.
We're doing a failure.
You think we could?
A second town meeting
Sure, yeah.
in December?
yes, there's time to do it.
We could
Okay.
even do it in January, doesn't, if
Well,
we missed the deadline.
what I was leading
Like
up
2
to,
weeks
what
or
it was
something.
leading up to was, what if you did it 12/1? I mean, there's a month there.
Yes.
And what is the downside?
The difference is that usually with a special town meeting in the fall, we do it in November so that if there's any financial articles, we can get it into the tax rate for that year, and that has to occur before December 1st.
So you think we will be having a special town meeting for other reasons?
Oh, yeah, we've been having a special
Yeah,
town
yeah,
meeting
yeah.
every year for the last.
So
Yeah.
November 1 is.
It could be the last, I think this year's was the 11th or 13th of November.
Well, I mean, every week matters.
Yeah,
You look
yeah,
at
yeah.
2 weeks, it's 2 weeks.
Yeah,
that we add to everything else.
Okay, but if we're ready for like November 1st, then we're absolutely gonna be ready for November 11th. So.
Right.
I don't wanna take that week now.
I mean, the question, how much, if we have a very good proposal that goes to HLC, we still have 3 meetings before we submit it to the select board. I mean, and
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see how much modification we're gonna do after the fact. Especially, if we vet this, we have some more public forums. And we put this, craft this so that we're fairly assured that HLC is gonna tweak it too much. How much are we gonna really tweak it at the end of this process?
Well, the other thing too to remember is that there are things that HLC is very concerned about. That's what they're reviewing for. But there are other things that the community might be concerned about. That as long as they aren't impacting what HLC is concerned about, or they're impacting it in a positive way, then you can still have that input over the summer. You can make some of the tweaks, but You just need to know what it is that would trigger another HLC review versus,
I guess
yeah.
my question is, do we should we be active after we hand it over to the planning board?
Oh, this group? Okay.
Well, that's a good question, man. I think it depends. Can we make that decision further down the road?
Yeah, I think we
Or is that a planning board decision?
or is that a planning board decision?
Well, maybe it's something we talk to the planning board about together.
I think we ought to be aware of that, because I think if we're making changes to something that the planning board has submitted, we're going to have a territorial problem.
So is it the planning board that makes the submission to you, which the?
Actually, it's the,
Select board.
it's the-
And I think the select board is going to, unless there are extraordinary circumstances, the select board will take the advice of the planning board.
So can you elaborate a little bit on what these things are that might be changeable after the EOHL, safely changeable after submission to E EOHLC?
So we're gonna, town will send in a draft to HLC that says, here's our draft zoning. It's going to have a number of different pieces in it, right? It's gonna have uses, it's going to have the purpose, it's going to have the dimensional standards, it's going to have the development standards. So some of the dimensional standards go into the model, and so that's changing the capacity as we've been discussing, right? Some of them don't. So it might be the difference between somebody says, look, I really hate the 30-foot setback here. I'd rather have it 25 feet or 35 feet. It's probably not going to matter so much. If they come in and say, I really hate the setback, I want it to be 100 feet, HLC is going to raise an eyebrow, right? When we get into the development standards, the key to the development standards is the balance of the amount of control that the community has with the development standards versus and what they can look at under site plan review versus making it so onerous that the multifamily couldn't be developed as a right. But within that, there's gradations, right? So we can say, we put it into HLC, we had these development standards, we heard in the outreach that something else was important. Do we think that that's something that's going to rise to the level of preventing the multifamily? No, we can make that change. That doesn't affect the compliance model. If we, as a conversation, we reach out to HLC and say, hey, look, we know it's under review with you. We just had a public meeting. Somebody raised this issue. We'd like to just make sure that this isn't going to trigger a negative response. So there is that portion of the zoning. The compliance model is not zoning. The compliance model is just calculation to say that we're getting there. So,
Yeah, I'm familiar with what's in compliance.
Yeah.
I assume that we can't change anything that's in compliance without running the risk.
we'd have to be very careful. I mean, I suppose we could increase the density and I'd be fine with that,
Yes.
but yeah. So,
We might do something which doesn't affect it.
I'm
Not like, no, well, yeah, there's a
The
few
changes
things.
between
Yeah.
districts.
yeah, and I do have a client, actually, we've been working on it back and forth for the last couple of days. We're going to the planning board with 2 different geographic options. So the zoning language is set. Within the zoning, there's an option 1 and then option 2. We're going to the planning board hearing with 2 maps and 2 options because we heard one thing at one public meeting and one thing at another public meeting. It makes sense to have the planning board public hearing help to determine which one is going to town meeting. So if we were in a position where you all wanted to hear from the public, option A and option B, we could send both options to HLC for the review. Because you're doing it that 90 days before and see what that is. Now, it's tricky. You'd probably rather have something be, a single option going forward. But there is some flexibility in there.
It's just a very tricky situation to be in when we're going before a public meeting, presenting something that we've already submitted.
Part of that's education too.
Well, no, I mean, the education part I get, but you certainly cannot pretend that we're eliciting serious comments and changes from the public when you're not.
Right.
Well, but
Right.
under
That's
the
my
schedule,
concern.
under the schedule, the planning board is having.
Having the public hearing before submitting.
Yeah, that's my point. Yeah, I agree.
So they are.
So then maybe your outreach over the summer is that education outreach. And it's the understanding when HLC comes back and says, we'd like you to change X, then you've gotten a chance to hear from the committee, or the community rather, of whether or not X is really important and needs to be rethought how that gets.
Well, to Sandy's point, this really puts pressure on us, I think, to do a huge amount of outreach prior to the date that we send this thing out. Because otherwise, we're gonna be listening to people and then telling them to go pound sand.
I don't want to be there. I have a question for you, Ann. Yeah. Looking at this schedule, I don't see the involvement of the select board at all. And it would seem to me,
September 16th.
well, no, but prior to the submission to you, to HLC.
You're right, there isn't, but
I assume
The
the
select
select
board
board
is-
would like to
would
be.
be the select board will certainly have representatives at all of the planning board meetings that consider this.
Yeah,
And we'll probably ask that you come to one of our meetings.
okay, so we need,
And
there,
and we may have to make a little adjustment here because if Emily, you had said the select board are the ones who submit the package.
In December, yeah.
Oh, in
Yeah.
December.
Yeah, I haven't
What
actually
about the
looked at it. We should look at the
package?
pre-approval package together.
Because if the planning board's meeting on May 13th, a week later is the 20th. We could put it on the select board's agenda for the 20th for them to vote to submit it to EOHLC, and we're only a couple days difference there, so. Actually,
Probably a good
I'm
idea.
sorry, Mark, are you saying there's a select board meeting on May 20th that you think?
don't you usually meet the alternate?
We meet on the 1st and 3rd,
Right,
and I don't think Monday,
and planning board is 7 and 4.
right, so,
but we could. In my experience, this particular select board is reasonably flexible about going to somebody else's meeting, but that's what's required. Or having a special meeting and saying, you will come to our special meeting. That's how our practice.
We'd be happy to come to the select board meeting.
And bring the planning board with you.
Bring-
And we
We'll try with the
maybe
big
have it in the
experience.
room so we don't.
Okay, are we pretty much, are we done with this topic?
I think this is probably the most important piece of paper that we're looking at. Well, and it does seem that we have a fairly leisurely schedule between some of these dates, April 18th to April 22nd, April 22nd to May 13th. I'm seeing, sort of days flipping by when we don't have a lot of days. And so that would only be a thought.
To write things. There's been enough time for me to write things and
Yeah.
respond to comments, so.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
In fact, I think we'll end up having to write a report submitted to the planning board. Now, luckily, we're writing it as we go along. But still, there's gonna be work to be done, sure.
You all can have homework too, so it doesn't feel like
Great.
things are slipping by.
And between just after May 8th, okay, that's good. Sorry. I'm thinking about our town election, which I believe is on the 21st of May.
Yeah, I think so.
And there may be new players. It would be nice to get this thing submitted before the new players show up.
Right.
submitted to.
HLC.
Yeah.
Forget the year, I think Emily's got the right tab.
Because even if the people who are new are completely on board with this, they'll also be lacking background and information.
It's time to get people up to speed, yeah.
That's when your days slip away.
The-
You think we could maybe do a joint meeting with the select board and planning board that week of May 13th? And do the hearing and have the select board there, so after the hearing, they could vote to submit it to EOHLC.
Is it a hearing or a public meeting?
Well, I thought, I put it down as a, well, public meeting, but I wasn't sure whether we're required to hold a hearing before we submit to EOHLC.
I think so, it was really just a courtesy, you're not required to submit it to HLC, just makes your life easier in the long run.
Oh, okay,
So, I don't recall seeing anything about
So-
the hearing, but I could check it.
so you, we maybe do a joint meeting on the 13th?
Okay, so the planning board
It would be
We'll have seen it
before
on
the
the
election.
and the planning board will have a meeting to review it. Yeah, I think we could do a joint meeting.
Yeah, on the 13th.
13th is on Monday. 13th of May.
The only word of caution is that the annual town meeting is 2 days after the April 22nd. In case there's stuff going on, we get ready for that.
I don't think anything will be. I mean, Ellen really doesn't like us to bring up anything that is
Yeah.
not subject to a town meeting vote at that town meeting.
Yeah.
So I think we,
It's okay.
I don't think
We just have one handouts.
we will have handouts for sure.
So that's a non-event for us,
I'm just thinking for the select board.
It's,
but also for the
Yeah,
staff.
I wasn't worried about
the
us.
select board will have a number of meetings. Well, we had 6 in each of May and June last year. That,
Well, there's also the opportunity on April 29th to have a joint meeting, because neither the planning boards nor the select board are scheduled for that next. That's the 5th Monday of the month.
oh, that would be a dictated to use. Because it would be a day where we could focus on.
Just on that, yeah,
Right, and you would be done with.
Well,
April 29th.
So why don't we think about that as a hard date, but then have the 13th
As a backup.
as a PM.
yeah, that's kind of, yeah. It might be a little rushed, that's what. I think the 13th.
It would hold both, and we can see how the zoning discussion itself goes.
Because part of the problem is planning board also is gonna be working on cell signal.
Maybe other things.
Right. It was almost like you need dedicated meeting.
And you know pretty much what we're doing here.
No.
Well, we know we're developing options and we've got some good ones on the
We gotta
ground.
hear from
Emily's got some more to show us tonight, but there may be a few more in the works.
Candidly, do we know?
We're not at ground zero.
I think we're making good
Square
progress.
one.
We're
so.
not on square.
Ground zero is something else.
It's a large hole in some Manhattan. Let's not go.
But just candidly speaking, we know pretty much what we're gonna be doing here.
We're pretty.
Maybe that's dangerous to
We have a
say.
sense. Let's put that. Sense.
I think it's more than a sense, I think we've done a lot of work on this. And we need to tie the pieces together.
Geographic, got geographic down.
And I have, just so you know, I have some compliant options to show you tonight.
Good,
That will give you a sense of where you might want to go.
All right, should we move on then?
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about potential district. And there was a question raised about how we are determining what these districts are. I want to go over our guidelines again for ourselves and for the greater audience, so you understand that we're not doing this in a vacuum. We set up these guiding principles, and I'm gonna read them again. First one is that we want to come up with districts that are gonna comply with the communities act, the law. Second most important thing is we want to protect and preserve the town character of the commercial uses in the downtown. The third is we want to choose alternatives that could be approved by town meeting, otherwise we're wasting our time. We want to encourage housing development to meet town needs, to include affordability, and to consider the state housing inventory and subsidized housing inventory in these decisions. We want to protect the shoreline and waterfront as resources for all citizens. We want to minimize impacts on open space, water resource areas, and coastal areas that may be threatened by flooding and sea level rise. Excuse me, we want to minimize the potential impact on town neighborhoods and their residents. We want to consider residential uses above first floor commercial uses. And we want to develop regulations that are least disruptive to existing zoning bylaws. With that said, I'm going to turn this over to Emily to walk us through some possibilities.
Pass that now. I just want to see it. And with that, I'm just going to share my screen so the people online can see what we're talking about.
And then the numbers on the chart that we're looking at are the numbers with current zoning.
I will walk you through everything because it's true of some, but not of others. Okay, so, these are your compliance requirements. And just to remind you also, we're looking for 559 units, 37 acres. We're looking for 40% within the transit station area, so that's 14.4 acres. 40% of the units, which is 224 units, and obviously the minimum density of 15 dwelling units per acre. So after our last conversation, I went back and I did a couple of things. This is what we were looking at last time. And again, the inside the station area and the outside the station area. The first thing I did was rename them. So we didn't have to refer them to as 1A, 1B, 1C. So you'll see the old name because that still ties to the map with the new name for each of these. And so the second thing I did is start calling up the options. So if you remember, we were playing around with a spreadsheet and taking some districts out and putting others in. And we were finding that we weren't necessarily meeting all of the criteria. And so the option 1 and 2 that I'm about to show you don't fail in some particular respect. So the left-hand side where you have the total to the left is what's within the station area. And then we had our 2 areas outside the station area. Option 1 failed because we don't have enough overall acres. Option 2 failed both in terms of the number of units.
I'm sorry, where's option 1 and option 2?
Option 1 is page 7.
Okay, I'm still looking at 5.
Okay.
Yeah, the first couple we
I
just.
see. Okay.
So sorry. Page 7.
Here's the renaming, got it.
Here's the rename.
Okay.
So option 1 failed because we only had 49.8 acres instead. We had 40, sorry, I was doing this on 50. Option 1 was okay in that respect. Option 2 failed because of the number of acres. And you can see that some of the districts are coming in and out as we were moving things around. So let me just go back. So option 1 was okay. That had stray X got in there. Option 2 failed because of the acres and the number of units, the total number of units, but it has the district test, so within the transit station area test for both the units and the number of acres. Option 3 is new. And I added 1D and A back to get some additional acreage. It also gave us some additional units of density, so it more than passes. We put Powder House and Elm Street back in.
We really want Powder House and Elm
We
Street.
do,
Yeah.
and
And I've got some more, we're talking more about Powder House and Elm
good,
Street. So,
yeah, it's the zoning is
below.
Exactly.
The actual density.
Yes,
So we
absolutely.
get the zoning up.
That's one of the areas, yep.
Yeah.
So, option 3 has A, which I'm calling MAC, which by the way stands for Manchester Athletic Club, because that's what Google said. And girly eye care. Option A1 is just a girly eye care site.
What's the legal office, Friday?
Yes.
So there's also a lady clinic there.
You know, it didn't pull up the lady clinic, it just said eye care. I was thinking, wow, that's a large building for an eye care.
no, it's
So
a
that's
medical
what it's
building.
like. Good to know. So my apologies for girly eye care for calling you out and for Leahy for not recognizing you. Option 4, which is page 10. So I wanted to see what would happen with that MAC site if we started putting some restrictions on dwelling units per acre, because option 3 had it at 443 units. So I said, what happens if you limit it to 20 dwelling units per acre? 15, by the way, means that you're non-compliant. So we have to stay above 15 in that area. So you drop it down to 408. And then to your point earlier about Powder House, on slide 11, I checked residency, which is the website that maps the residential units and density for each of the areas. And the Powder House site is currently 24 units with a current density of around 13.15. So what I did was I went into the zoning and I said, what's the easiest change I can make to change that density? And right now it's limited to 4 units per lot. I changed it to 12 units per lot, and lo and behold, so you still have a restriction on it, but it brings it up to the current, roughly the current density at 13.4. That also allows us to drop the number of units on the max site down. So with all of these, I was trying to aim for like just above compliance. What's the lowest that I can get? So we have some flexibility, right?
And I
So-
think, and actually, I have some data that says there are actually 29.
And I can look, it
There
was
are.
just, that's what was on residency.
There's 29 in the apartment buildings.
Are they on
So
2 different
that's
sites?
2 different sites.
Okay, so I just picked up
Lots.
one, yeah, so I just picked up one of them, so
So if you
I
pick
can
up
add that back in, yeah. So that might end up being, you know, maybe we're aiming for 14 or something, yeah. Then, so I'll stop there, just, those were 3 different options for how we could be compliant, getting to the density, using most of the different areas we talked about. We had removed Newport Park because we thought there might be a restriction on it. Yeah, we removed the downtown because of the concerns about commercial. I thought having a 3, 4, and 5, and actually that earlier option 1 was pretty good. But then I thought, you know, when I was presenting last time, I was talking about the analysis we did on your current zoning that allows the 3 units for dwelling conversion. I don't know if you noticed that I slid right across that very quickly, because as I was presenting it, I suddenly said, you know what, we made a calculation. So what I did on page 12 is we went back and corrected the error. And so what you see is that you get more than enough acres in the station area. You get more than enough units based on the current analysis. You don't get your dwelling units per acre. So
this is doing the whole general.
this is doing the whole within the transit area.
Based on
Yeah,
current zone.
based on current zoning. So then I said, well, thought exercise, right? What would it take to become compliant with one of these with this as one of your options, right? So 13 is saying, well, if I take the max site, our original A site at what it was from option 3, which was at its highest level, how do we do? And obviously, we're more than make the acres, we're more than make the units, we're still under the density. Yeah. So second thought exercise, what do I have to do to that second site, the one that's outside of the borders, in order to get us up to our minimum density? And on page 14, you can see I just squeaked over 15.8. You can see what I did at the top. So it would be 4 stories, 30% open space, no dwelling units per acre restriction. And it would end up being a modeled capacity of 985 units. Now,
Our existing height restriction is 55 feet up there.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, so 4 stories is not out of it. I
Right.
think the open space is a little bit lower than what's up there now, but that model gets you to using your 3 units your current zoning within the transit area and making your density just squeaking by. I mentioned there's something that I might want to talk to HLC about in the stuff that I was presenting to you tonight. I would want to talk to HLC about this. And
What would
just,
your statement to HLC be?
I'd say, this is the existing zone. We've modeled it. This is how we modeled it. We think that gives us the capacity. Do you agree that, or would you accept this as a valid approach? Even though it's unusual, right? This restriction to using the existing building is a little unusual. We haven't seen it, I've seen it in one other place recently. That's a very different circumstance. Interestingly enough, it's a circumstance I'm talking to HLC about. So that's why I say I would just say, look, this is something that we haven't seen. There's a reason that's in here. This is why the community has it. It appears to meet the requirements of the compliance model. I'd probably do the calculations again about 12 more times before I called them up. But I thought, as a thought exercise, I'd put that forward as an option. You know, you all have brought it up as wanting to model it. We made what I had done initially, just so you know, is I had told my colleague who was doing the modeling for all the buildings that have 3 units, you know, count the 3 units. Anything under 3 units, it's not multifamily, so don't count it. The mistake I made was we didn't count the buildings that were above 3 units. We didn't limit them to 3 units. So that's what we went back to do is getting, so that's why you went from 147 to 366, because you could do 5 units. So we mistakenly took that out instead of saying, well, we can do 3 of the 5. So just because you can get 5 units doesn't mean that you have to do 5 units, you could just do 3.
Would it
So
be
that's what I
possible
meant.
to have the zoning say that all existing units are allowed by rule?
But this is saying that there's no change.
Yeah.
The zoning,
Maybe that's what he-
Yeah, we're not.
this is the existing zone.
Yeah, the mistake
We
was
are
in the
waiting.
calculation.
No,
The current zoning does not allow 3 units by right in the general district.
it does in
It
the existing
allows- It
structure.
allows 3 units by right in the same volume, on the same footprint with 5 parking spaces.
We modeled all of that except for 5 parking spaces.
I understand, except for 5 parking spaces. And why do you think that's a significant factor?
So we could go back and then do a calculation to see if how many of those units have enough land to put 5 parking spaces on. That would be the next.
Yeah, I
one.
think
What pressure do you think that puts on development or the demolition and replacement of existing structures?
This is saying in an existing structure. It's not allowing the demolition. Oh, but that's what we have today.
Well, when I read the zoning law, it doesn't say existing structure, it says same footprint, same.
No, it says in existing structure.
Oh, really?
And we've
Okay.
had it on the
It
books for 50 years, and look at how much development we've done.
Well, no, we got it with 5 parking spaces, please. You walk down, walk down Washington Street, walk down North Street, and tell me how many of those houses could possibly be turned into a 3-family under the current?
Many of them have open space that could allow for parking, and that's what the model looks at. You might not want it, but
Let's see what Ann
it's-
has to say.
First, I wanted to say that somebody could buy an existing structure, take it down, build a different structure as a single family home. And then convert that, which had carefully been designed so that it could be converted into a 3-family.
But the caveat to that, Ann, is it needs to be on a conforming lot. It needs to conform with setbacks. It needs to conform with coverage. And that's why that sort of thing has not occurred in the general district.
How many
Today.
conforming lots do we have in the general district?
That would be the next test.
Not very many.
But the three units in an existing structure does not have to be a conforming lot.
Because
Okay, so they couldn't turn it, couldn't tear it down and build a new building on it because it's not conforming.
Right.
Right, yeah.
Which is why
The existing.
which is why
structure.
we haven't seen it.
On Washington Street, for example, there isn't enough space between the houses to put in a driveway,
But there's space out back, and in the model, they'll count the space out back.
even if it's inaccessible.
most of those houses on Washington Street, there is space.
There's a driveway.
And there are driveways, there actually,
Well, there
I don't
are,
live there, you do.
But there's space out back.
Well, I'm not sure this is the point anyway. What this exercise shows is that we can present an alternative, which is to say, you don't want really any significant changes in downtown. That's fine, but to comply with the MBTA zoning, we're gonna have to allow 900 units out of the
That's the
LCD.
problem.
Yes, and that's what I
Yeah,
wanted to get to.
Yes.
Yes, that is exactly what I wanted to get
Right.
to, because I understood the reluctance, right, of adding more development
52
downtown.
units per
Talking
acre.
about that, so it was, what happens
Yeah.
if you don't change the downtown?
Right.
I'm happy to see us consider
Yeah.
alternatives.
Mhm.
But a global change like this makes me very, very worried about the unforeseen consequences. I think this would have to be thought through very, very carefully, because I'm not convinced that it does not change things dramatically.
It's existing zoning and it hasn't changed in 50 years. What's gonna make it all of a sudden?
Well,
change?
you say it's existing zoning, that would remain to be seen when it comes to what actually gets presented to the EOHLC. Because, for example, those houses, are you gonna have, 1,500 square foot houses converted into?
No,
three
under the
units?
model, it's gotta be a 3,000 square foot house to get the 3 units.
That's actually how we tested.
1,000
But
per
you just
unit.
said existing units.
Yes.
Oh, I see. Here's the
Therefore, it
model.
doesn't work.
Yeah, the model's gonna restrict it to 3,000 square foot houses, so it will take a lot out.
That's
My
how we
only,
tested.
my only concern about doing it in the general district is what if we want to, doing some studies in the next couple of years, we want to make some changes in the general district to support additional business growth. And, you know, and maintain our new things to support our, we have a couple marinas there that are very important. And stores and that type of thing, and that maybe, you know, this is not, you know, we might make changes, this would be then non-compliant.
But I think the point of this is saying, okay, if you don't want to change zoning, this would be your result.
Right, but.
Not
we all
saying
want-
that you necessarily select it, but it shows you can conform without changing your existing zoning.
Except
well,
that
except.
there's a
If you want,
downside.
if you want 1,000 units in the LCD.
Which
Right,
nobody's gonna want.
right.
To Mark's point, I think in the discussion, I've been fiddling around with maps for a couple days here, is that we've taken something out of consideration in these scenarios that in my conversations with people seems to be the first spot that people think of as where additional housing should go. And that is actually downtown over the commercial, because there's some already.
Yeah, I noticed that.
And it seems like the easiest spot to add. And in fact, historically, I think Anne mentioned at least part of the J. Barrett building and maybe some further.
It's, the J. Barrett building goes all the way down the line. That's one lot.
Okay, well,
Just,
it's,
Mari is separate.
yeah,
Right,
but it's a
J.
separate lot.
Barrett down to Mari. This side of Mari is all one yacht.
But it used to be 2 stories. with
Yeah.
houses above.
Yeah,
But
Until 1905.
the problem is, people want to maintain the character.
yes,
And if you put that in, you tear it all down and build something else.
no, you don't. They don't. You make a zoning rule so you don't have that effect.
You can't.
But we can't do mandatory retail, so.
No, I'm not saying mandatory retail. You make an incentive. You say it's a mixed use district. To Mark's point about.
Well, I just don't think it's worth the
And run the
effort.
risk of losing, retail.
I think our job is to present options that people can think about, not to say we're omniscient and we think this is the way, but to say, you know, this looks like it might be a minimal change, and are we gonna be clever enough to try and make sure the facade of the building, say, to do something, Sarah, just like so it's the existing building, but to do it, you could add a story. If it's, you know.
It's not an existing structure, you're adding onto a structure. So what would happen is the whole block would be bulldozed. And a new block would be built
I
with
don't
residential.
understand, I don't understand why you can't do the same thing for commercial that you do for residential and say it has to be an existing building.
Because you don't,
It's not existing zoning, that's new zoning.
Right.
I'm thinking actually of the structure of the building. You said it was originally 2 stories.
Yeah.
Did they just take the second story out or was there a fire burn? Okay, so it may not be structurally sound enough to add. Now, you could ask them to retain the facade, but that would be the same thing as obviously the original building. So
Yeah.
you run into it with 1-story buildings that they may not have been built to actually take the second story. It doesn't mean it can't be retrofitted, it just gets more expensive. So it's just to confirm that the intent of what I showed you today was to show minimally compliant scenarios. Not the same thing as good planning, not the same thing as hitting all the criteria that we have
Right.
here. So I wanted to give you kind of different types of options to think about tonight. But I think we're sort of, it feels like we might be narrowing in on at least some districts. I'm interested to hear more about the, you know, whether or not you guys want to bring the downtown back in, and is there an incentive? You know, happy to, we still have some time, in other words, to model out some more scenarios before we start.
I certainly would like to see it, because I think if you have an area downtown where 10 to 12 summer, which is currently fairly densely.
It's compliant.
It's compliant, right, and then you have another,
Well, let's talk about when
Another
you say
half.
downtown. Are you talking about 10 to 12 summer or are you talking beach?
we should look at it, we should look at that.
Okay.
That's the easiest way.
The one thing I did not bring with me,
Oh,
is I have my old one, my other ones
I
here.
have a map.
You've been very patient.
One of the things that's going on currently is there's another task force that's studying harbor management. And one of their likely conclusions will be, one of the conclusions I think they're likely to come to is that things facing the water are restricted to water related businesses. So anything that we're going to run into them when we show a map that includes the boat yards.
Can I just ask for you to clarify again, last general option, make sure I really understand?
Yeah, which page?
Yeah. That would be helpful.
Are you saying that you are literally using the same zone?
Yes, we are using the, in an existing building, you can have 3 units.
And for buildings that have a square footage over,
So what we did was we actually took the assessor's data, we took the size of the building, which the assessor collects it, we
Yeah.
divided it by 3,000. If it was more than 3,000, we allowed it to have 3 units, basically.
okay, and you took away the parking.
Yeah, because we don't have to worry about land, right? Because if it's an existing building. So there are other analyses that we would layer on this if you were interested in pursuing it, but it's an existing.
I mean, you did not have a 5-unit parking,
Oh, yes, we did not have.
so you did take that.
Yeah, we didn't.
So the
touch that.
downsides to that
Yeah,
are that A, you took away the parking requirement. B, we have a large, I'm just trying to understand, and we have a larger requirement of units out in the LCT because we are having to average the 2 areas.
Yes.
we did not consider the park, it isn't that we took away the parking requirement, we just simply did not consider it. So that would have,
Well,
that could
I
be.
mean, if I'm
yes,
comparing it to existing zoning,
Yes, then,
I would say
then I
we
would
took
say
away
that.
the parking.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. Yes, so yes, we took away the parking and that would be a downside, potential downside. And then the other potential downside is the number of units that would have to be outside. We modeled it on one site, doesn't mean it has to be one single site. That was just the one that we were talking about. But you would have to have that or probably close to it, depending on the characteristics of the other
Right.
lot. But
Okay,
fair.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing I noticed on a number of these options is that, if I have it right, the total acreage
To come
in
down.
downtown
Yeah.
is higher than, like
Yes.
almost double what we need.
Yeah, so played around with that a little bit, because of the type of the districts that we were talking about having in there. It did end up kind of being consistent, but you do have some room for maneuver in terms of taking something out.
And in fact, if we were to take the commercial areas out, so it was essentially the residential parts of the G district that you'd be doing this 3-unit conversion.
I'm off of that option. I'm down to one of these other options.
No, I
now.
understand, but what I'm just saying is because you don't need all the 74 acres in the downtown, there may be parts of the downtown that are more suitable for the 3-unit conversion.
Yeah, but the problem is the density is so low.
That was the problem, is
That-
that, it's why I had to
Yes.
take this back.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
the
one,
problem with that.
it's like 1B and 1C are the core of an option because
But the
they are
densities-
currently pretty
Oh, I
dense.
see.
Those two, it's basically Powderhouse Lane and Sawmill Circle. With the current, if you change the current zoning on Powderhouse Lane to match what is there, then you have almost 10 acres within the circle at a density level.
You need
that's
15.
acceptable, but like 14.8. Yeah. So you've got 5, you need 5 more acres.
Which you could take,
Someplace else.
you could take a portion of Lower Pine to get that 5 acres.
Yeah,
Not go up as high,
right.
because originally we went up to Newport Park. And by taking the lower part, you get those condos in there,
Right.
where you have 12 units on 3/4 of an acre, I think.
Yeah.
Or you could take 1012 Summer Street
Yes,
and gas station.
Too small.
right.
Too small.
No,
No,
it's
well,
5 acres between the two of them, I think.
no, it's not, it's 3 something, but you can go across town, you can go across the street.
But
And
then we
pick up
ran,
the
we
acres you
ran
need.
into problems with that, because it's all one lot.
Well,
Yeah.
Which cuts in the middle of Crosby's.
no, I didn't mean across that street, I meant across we should look at a map, because I really have been fussing with it, because I thought, really, we need to offer that as an option, even if we wind up thinking it's not the
Yeah,
best, I think we need, because it's a common
that
sense
whole-
thing to do.
No, I'm talking about this.
So I have 10 to 12 Summer Street, and then you were talking about the gas station.
That's-
Yes, I have the parcel numbers.
That is genius, I love a good parcel number.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you talk about location, I'm like, wait, where?
Before you go there, what exactly?
You want to see on that?
Yes,
Okay.
because we talked about all sorts of things in that area.
Yes. we can.
And now you're coming up with your own
Well,
ideas.
no, I was just,
And we don't know what to include.
well,
You can include me.
We don't want to model it just after one person, so.
so.
There'll be some,
Because we talked about going up the left side of each.
Pencil.
Sure, we don't need to mark it off.
So,
no, option, what do you mean, that was option two.
Option 2 is okay,
up here.
option 1 works, option 2 doesn't.
So you're going
straight on
Each
some
street
option 1.
from
But option
summer
two
up to
doesn't
Union.
work.
Yes, and you're
Okay.
including cars.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
including that thing.
For beach.
And then go across to here.
I was thinking when I,
And
next to the
then-
slides for you, I'll put on the bottom. where requirements are.
I'm not sure how you do that.
That's the problem.
Connected over here,
Yeah.
because,
Can we, this is.
yeah, sorry. I'm happy to show everybody this.
Yeah, I don't think that's in the area.
I did bring maps because I left them last time, but also because I know it's been hard for the people watching
see,
online.
to
Do
see.
you have a map that you can track on the screen? Let me see if I still have it on here. I think I have this book.
I think there's a way to get pretty close without risking change. It's significant.
Yes, you want the main map or the inset focused on the downtown?
And what's that focus on the downtown? Okay.
You should be able to see that. And then-
Can you zoom in?
Yes, with that.
Oh, yay.
Also where we like to the Zoom.
That's
I'm trying to do something.
okay. I'm happy to go point if that would be useful. That would be very useful. Okay.
There's no one in the Zoom.
I will try and annotate it or at least point it out for the people on Zoom. I have to switch between glasses, but
We're down, more towards the pink area.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
No, I'm sorry, the orange area. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So it seemed to me that if we took, whoops, oh, can I touch this thing? Is it a touch? Is it-
Not sure.
Oh, dear.
the X on the top, see where it says participants? Follow that line over and touch that X,
Yeah,
not the very top X. No, not
This one.
That one, yes, you got it.
and then
There
I,
you are.
can I touch it?
No.
Don't
No.
touch the
Okay, all right. So you take 10, 12 summer,
screen. Okay,
you take the garage, you go up here, take what's next to it, and you take Gar's place, and maybe go across the street to that 9-unit building we were looking at before at,
so up to the blue.
yes, up here. Go over here, Cargo Unlimited, and then go across. That takes quite a bit. And then you go across here.
Cross where?
I can't touch it. Sorry. It is, you go across beach to where Jay Barrett is and to where the
That's all.
Coffee Cup is.
That's
Can you
all.
see my green line on the?
Yes,
screen now?
yeah, that's roughly it. And if I could figure, I haven't thought about it enough. But it seems to me that over here on Church Street, you have a couple of properties.
We didn't want to include those.
Well, yeah, but they're,
They're historic,
no, right, but they're very dense.
They're compliant.
They're compliant,
but they're still historic.
right, but you can protect them.
No, you can't really. I'm limited as to your
They're not
protection.
protected grounds.
Okay.
If
The
you-
economics.
If you
Doesn't make
go,
any sense to tear them down and,
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, no, unless somebody's wildly crazy, they wouldn't do it. Honestly.
if you go
And-
diagonally across here, whoops, sorry, don't touch. And pick up
Hardware.
the Valentine's building,
Okay,
The what?
Valentine's building,
Happen.
Oh, Tappan, Willow Tappan.
yeah.
Yeah.
Down
But
to,
we're not doing
oops.
Harbor Point.
down to well, that doesn't touch Harbor Point.
Yeah, but you can't connect it to.
I can connect that across the diagonal.
Yeah, across
What do you connect?
you go by the dry
Here.
cleaners.
You you can't get the dry cleaners, you,
You can't get to 10-12 Summer from 34 Tappan.
okay.
There's Harbor Point's in the way.
But you could go all the way along the railroad track,
Yes, you
down
can.
to Crosby's.
Yeah, they're lots. They're.
But the lot, no, the lot isn't, that's not the way the lot is.
Well, the
But the
lots
lines-
here.
Okay, you can't really see the lot lines because they're under the thick blue line.
But-
There is a section here that is not, it includes the electric building.
Yeah.
But you have to go through Harbor's Point.
No, I don't think.
Yes,
it is.
you do.
No, you don't. You
I
can
don't
go
think
along
Harbor's
the
Point
railroad
goes
track.
down there. I looked at the Harbor's Point line.
Sarah.
Like a blue deal.
It stops before you get to the very end of the.
You've got summer
where?
here, you've got one,
Pretty sure.
two.
You get a bus test.
Yeah.
I think the point of that lot, of Harbor Point, abuts, yeah.
But not C
Right.
Street.
Yes.
Not sure.
No, it abuts, Harbor Point goes down. It's that V shape
Right.
that goes all the way down to C Street.
It doesn't go to C. Here's the end of the, you know. And there are 1, 2, 3, actually 4 lots. Yeah. 1, 2 of which are.
That is,
I don't know what that is.
I think it's municipal, I think.
I have no idea.
You can connect towns, you can connect that furniture site across, without touching
Yeah.
Harbor Point. I'm looking at the maps.
Yeah.
Yeah, what are you
I'm
connecting?
looking at the town
What
GIS.
lots are you connecting through? She's got,
there's a property at the corner of,
Yeah.
C and the railroad, that little house there on the railroad.
Yeah,
That's, directly across from Allen's.
but who owns it?
It's a private owner.
Well, it's not the railroad.
There is some excluded land. in
That's what
that
I
area.
thought,
So you
yeah.
can connect across the excluded land, it's just gonna change.
I don't think the excluded land reaches up to that warehouse that we have.
1502 is what I'm wondering.
Is 1502 the one that's the Valentine, or is Valentine's
No.
1504?
Valentine would be the 1504.
1503.
No, 1503 is owned by people across the street.
Not the garage.
Valentine
Hmm.
block, Valentine building.
Valentine
Valentine
Rovers,
Rovers.
1504, it's 1504.
It's where the old bricks.
I wanna look up 1502.
So you could, you can take across from Valentine's.
I'm looking
along
up
C
This
Street.
summer.
I'm looking up 1502 to see,
Okay,
what property it is.
Yeah, because that's an important connection.
It may be town owned land.
It may be a BTA.
uh,
That would be ironic. The connection for MBTA, so because the MBTA owns the land.
But you can jump
the
across.
MBTA.
Did you say you could jump across?
Is it? Yeah, so that's owned by the
Can you
MBTA.
jump across with the zoning district across the land?
Oh, yeah, you can include, excluded land can be included in the district, it just means that it
Doesn't
just changes your
change.
numbers, yeah.
Yeah.
You can't,
But it doesn't really hurt us to go across.
no.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense, of course.
I mean, if it was this big and your resident is
it's
small, it would be an issue.
Rich, how many acres is it?
0.35.
Yeah.
But you wanna exclude the 1503, you don't wanna include that.
You don't have to, yeah, you don't have to.
Who is 1503? It's the one.
It's a private piece of property that's owned by the people who live across the street on the other side of C Street.
So it's not necessary to include it, so.
Yeah, it's not buildable anyway.
It's not buildable for water
It's too tiny,
resources.
it's tiny.
No, it's raining, it's not.
We do not 1 acres.
I'm sorry.
Okay, anyway, I think it's worth trying to figure it out. Yeah, ask Emily to sort of play and see what we can. What might work.
I think if we're serious of doing this, we should draw up a specific area that we're interested in, give it to Emily rather than asking her to go on.
Yes. Yes.
That would be helpful, because I think my squiggly green lines here, may be confusing both me and the people, watching at home.
That's really to draw that up for us.
So this
We're
is,
gonna draw that up.
these are the properties.
But I'm a little unclear about what objective is.
These two, this Crosby's in the middle of this spot. But you have to go through that to get to.
Well, I don't think.
It doesn't work for me to-
Use your last Line Street.
Yeah, we've got,
And get space that's already dense. And a frankly eyesore.
I think we're already down to using very little of Pine Street except for the condominiums.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
We're already down there because we're
I
at
think we
19
need to look at
acres
that.
with those two, so we have 4 acres to give up, which really.
Which
If we go, if you look at option 2,
Morse Court, Sawmill Circle and Powder House and Elm Street.
right,
Those two parcels are 10.4.
Where is Brook and Desmond?
I'm not looking at that right
Okay,
now.
so we have 15 acres approximately without using Brook and Desmond, just using Firehouse Lane, Sawmill Circle.
Right, and the,
Yes, you've
the
got 15
problem
acres
was,
And you could make the
But-
size of the parcel less.
the problem was the density of, because we didn't include what's there on Powder House, so you can change the zoning at Powder House to allow for high.
And we may have to change the zoning on some of Pine Street, which I think is zone A. Zone D.
No.
I think it's D, you're right.
D2,
I can certainly,
but D2 is an overlay district. only the 100 feet from the street, this D2.
Okay, but there's, if D2 is an overlay, what's an overlay on?
It's actually, no, it's a separate district.
Wait, let me check.
It's a
It's
separate-
not D2, we changed it the last, but
The condos are in general district, right? Is that what you said, Richard?
What?
You said the condos on Pine Street are general district.
Did I say that?
Yeah. Pretty sure.
I believe that's true from
Yeah,
what I'm
but you-
looking at.
Yes.
Pulled up about
In fact-
on that.
In fact, quite a bit. Goes up. Goes up right up to the reservation.
G
The general
goes up.
district.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
on Pine.
Okay.
So on Lower Pine, we're just gonna go down to where the condos are.
You're gonna go up to where Putter House Hill is, where the green stuff is.
Right, so here, so this is what I'm calling Lower Pine. This is Lower relative, up on the green cursor is, this whole green I'm talking about is Lower Pine.
So we're talking about going up to there.
Up to there, okay,
Deer
so we're at Deer Hill Road.
Right.
We're talking about going up as far as we have to do to get the
Yeah.
15 acres.
Yeah,
Right.
okay,
Or we can look at getting 5 acres
Because that
Out of
includes a gas
out of
station.
downtown.
What?
With mixed use,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we need to look at it and see what people think.
yeah, I think we should go ahead and model. it.
Yeah.
I modeled the mixed use, model what we just talked
Yeah,
about today,
yeah.
yeah,
Like a Richard Drucker.
yes, that'd be great, happy to do that for our next
Yeah.
meeting, okay, great.
Okay,
All right, so I've got a couple of model changes for the next meeting. Anything else that you need from me?
You know, is it, we get the spreadsheet details, so we can look at what's actually happening in this market.
Yeah, of course.
Can
Yeah.
you, would you email us when you get to, email Chris? The model.
Make sure you email Gail so that she can distribute it to everyone.
Yeah, I'll do that, yeah.
You know, we sometimes don't get stuff.
Let me clean it up a little bit, because a lot of it is us, so
Because we just want to second guess you.
But at least you put it out on the table, which is great.
It's a straightforward.
No, that's just fine. You know what, it's yours, I don't think it's your process, you have the right to the information, so.
Well, we are all on the same side, so.
Yes,
I just have one other question for you, because it may not matter. But when we look at this map,
yes,
the location of the train station is not where it actually is.
interesting,
well,
okay,
it's not a station, it's a stop.
It's,
Yeah.
it has it at the corner.
There is actually.
Wait a minute, let me talk. It has it at the corner of Beach and the railroad
But
track,
it's actually.
whereas in
Yeah.
effect, it's down,
The other end.
I think it's where that building.
yeah.
What do you think?
It shows it here, but it's actually here. So the half-mile radius is not accurate.
okay,
I don't know if it matters, but,
all right, I'll talk
and
to
maybe,
map maker.
yeah,
You know, Sarah, I ran into that when I first did this. I don't think it makes any appreciable difference to anything.
it might be to our detriment because it might impact some of the area that we're looking at.
It does not. It will not.
Well,
Because if you look at that circle,
Scroll out. Yeah, because we're taking, we're not doing 1A anymore,
you just,
and we're taking away that public boundary.
Sarah, look at the circle
I'm sorry.
again. You gotta move that thing a long way to affect anything right.
yeah. No, but originally when we were going up for the fines.
Oh, yeah, back then it wouldn't matter.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, any other questions for Emily?
Well, I actually have two clarifications. So are we asking Emily to look at the Gordon College site as well as the?
I think I've done all the modeling I can on the Gordon College site until I know where you all are with that. I did some modeling last time. It was just, there's gonna be 20 acres here somewhere. There's nothing more I can really do unless you have a specific. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So just because,
We have a prayer, having anything kind of this kind of. Or when we smell.
I don't, how often do you go to church?
I'm a regular attendant and I'll be happy to.
Well, the most recent, communication that I had today, when I inquired as to where they are. The trustees are meeting today and tomorrow. And I've been assured that I'll hear some response after that meeting.
Oh, that's great.
But, let's assume for the purposes of our discussion, our prayer meeting here, that they say, yeah, this is a great idea. We then have to carve out a site that's gonna be hopefully acceptable to the Concom. We have to get a site surveyed, subdivided, all of which takes time.
And transferred to some private entity.
And that's easy. That's the easy part. Now, I asked Emily before, and I don't know, I think you didn't have an answer at the time, could we identify a site short of going through the subdivision process and lease it for,
Yeah.
you know, an interim period of time
I'll remind myself.
in order to, you know, basically circumvent the need to get an A and R at this point in time. And I don't think we have an answer to that. But there's a lot to be done because I think the Concom's gonna wanna have experts opine on the location. And obviously it's, you know, it's in our interest, if we can, to make sure that that's a long ways away from our water supply, a long ways away from salamanders, newts, vernal pools, the whole yard. And I think we need somebody to make sure that that's the case. So there's a lot to be done and the time is short.
Is it possible that something like that could be a switch out? Like after the preliminary thing has gone to HLC?
In other words, if we had land identified in the LDC, it was approved, and we said, oh, not this piece. This
As
piece."
long as it's the same acreage?
I think what I would do is I would let them know it's a possibility.
Okay.
And say, we're putting this forward for review. We're working on this. This is how, if this happened, would change that. What do you think? I think the
Yeah.
more you disclose
That's
up front, the better it
Yeah.
will be on.
Cause that's the other option, you know, you kind of
Right.
Yeah.
make,
So as far as making changes, so let's say we settle on certain districts downtown and certain place up by the highway. Let's say whether it's the downtown and we want to reemphasize some commercial and reduce the residential on a piece of it, and we want to swap that out for a different piece, or we want a little bit from this highway exit to that highway exit. Besides, of course, needing approval of town meeting because it's zoning.
Right.
Would we have to go through the same process and filing and the amendment? I'm sure the BOHLC hasn't really discussed that to any great degree.
You mean if after the zoning is
Yeah,
passed?
so we pass this,
Yeah.
to get something passed,
Mhm.
and then as the downtown committee is, or the harbor committee works through something, and they go, yeah, it'd be better if we did
Yep.
this. Everyone kind of agrees, and now we need to modify the boundaries, which from a zoning perspective is pretty simple.
Right.
However, from what's the process, well, yeah, I mean, technically, not necessarily getting everyone to agree. But does EOHLC have a shorter process or anything set up for reviewing modifications or not yet?
I do know that you do have to tell them that you've changed the zoning, you have to prove that it's still compliant. I don't know that they've actually set up anything other than the current process. I don't know if they would take you know that because they haven't even got to the first round. But it's a good question. I think for the moment, we can assume it's going to be the same.
It's a really good point, which we
Yeah.
talked about before. In some sense, they own this area.
right,
They have, you are constrained in
Right.
anything that you do. Because you must, and you, it won't be any more transparent than it is now, probably.
and if you wanna do something, change it to something more restrictive, you gotta grandfather in the MBTA zoning while it existed.
Or you wouldn't be able, why would they let you do that?
No, that under zoning laws, you can't take it away from people once you've given it, so if you're gonna go back to something more, or restore, I agree with you, basically, you can't do much once you've set up the district.
In theory, right, they say you have to zone for a district, or
Yeah.
which could be the sub-districts and all that. But in theory, you could completely change that district, right? You could pass and have approved District A. And then you could say, but you know what? Things change, the world changed, we think District B would be a better place. You could in theory, especially if it's an overlay,
Right, but if you had changed the zoning,
if you change the zoning and somebody had built under it, yes.
even if they haven't, the lot would be grandfathered.
Well,
If it was a larger, if it was a smaller lot, yeah, it's grandfathered.
Yeah, regardless, it would be grandfathered.
Yeah.
No matter how you did the zoning, once it's
Yeah.
built, it's existing.
So once it's built, but not, if it's not built.
But
it's not-
if your lot
Right,
becomes conforming under the MBA community zoning, then and you change it, it's now a not grandfathered non-conforming lot.
yeah,
Yes.
no, but you could have somebody argue that you upzoned my lot. It's now more valuable, now you've downzoned it, and therefore that's a regulatory taking. That could happen.
No, but also if you zoned it to say it's a 6,000 square foot lot requirement, let's say.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna change it to a 20,000 square foot lot. All 6,000 lots that were zoned as that are now
Oh,
non-conforming.
I see what you mean,
grandfathered.
okay, sorry, I see what you mean, yeah, I was misunderstanding.
So there's only so much you can change.
See that.
I agree.
Okay, any other further discussion on this?
I do have one more. I just want to clarification on the map and Gurley site.
Yes,
Didn't you also include, we had talked about the Beaver Dam Road area? Those across.
I think we decided to exclude it because of all the wetlands.
yeah, I don't remember that being.
And we didn't meet the acreage,
Yeah,
Okay.
That's what I would thought.
Yeah.
that it wasn't worth it.
yeah, I think there's too much excluded land.
Y'all done with Emily? Send her on her way?
So she can start doing new little scenarios.
Yeah.
Can you, get some thought as to whether the court count could be reached? Kyle?
Yeah, I can do that,
Do that,
I'll
that'd
see
be
if I can find out the answer from somebody on that.
Okay, moving right along with our agenda, we have reports from the outreach committee on the design guidelines.
Excuse me, Chris,
Wait, oh, somebody on the phone.
yeah, before Emily leaves, Ron Mastro Giacomo, 9 Mascanoma Street, has a schedule been established as to when this may come before the planning board?
Mark, you want to answer that question?
Yeah, so we tentatively, our schedule would have a first joint meeting on April 8th. Between the task force and the planning board. And we would have April 22nd as a second meeting to review. And perhaps modify or make some adjustments. Again, that could be a joint meeting with the task force. And then we have a third meeting tentatively for April 29th. Or the 13th of May, or both of them. And one of them would be a joint meeting of the select board. After which they would both be submitted to EOHLC.
Great, will Emily be in attendance on those meetings?
If we hope so, yes.
Yeah, we'll confirm.
We'll have to confirm that, yes.
And Mark, can you send me those dates?
Yes, yes, I can. I'll send you the entire, schedule.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so Richard, tell us about design guidelines.
We had, as I said last meeting, we have into two subcommittees. And One is working on policy, we have a draft copy of what do we call policy considerations, and our idea there is to delineate all the things we need to think about in terms of the administration and applicability of design guidelines that we come up with. Are they required, mandatory, who courses them, how does all that fit together? So that's coming along. The architects group is working on the design guidelines themselves. They have looked over the West Newbury district and pulled out a number of things from it. They've looked at a number of the other design guidelines. They're in the process of drafting design guidelines. They've also done a little pictorial survey, which looks a lot like our Chris's walk through Manchester. So my hope is that at our meeting on the 16th, we'll be looking at some of the design guidelines out. The question about whether design guidelines are mandatory or optional is not a simple one, and certainly there will be optional design guidelines. But we may well be able to pull some portion of those guidelines into the actual overlay language itself, as they did in West Newbury. That would mean that we would have something that actually have some teeth in it, whereas, you know, the rest is really just our hope that developers will be fine. We've got really good cooperation from everybody. Great.
Any questions for Richard? All right, so as soon as I'm here, Sandy, can you talk about the outreach?
Sure. That's right.
Sure.
This document asks a lot of questions. And perhaps we're not the ones who can make the decision, but for example, who should administer it? It seems fairly obvious from your description that it should be the planning board. So can we just say planning board and stop worrying about?
We're not, this is a draft, we're gonna simplify this. This is just an attempt to get a first. Think outside the box, get everything down on paper, and then I think there's some other areas and also we're gonna get some.
Okay, good, because
I agree. No, that's the intent of that
It's a
document.
brain dump.
The intent of that document is for the guidelines group to have some kind of a structure to analyze what we recommend for the task force on the design guidelines themselves. That's really.
okay, because you've got 3 questions of this and 4 questions of that, and by the time it goes through all the people who have to approve it, you're going to have 27 different answers. And I
don't know that that's gonna get out of the design. I don't know that that's gonna get out of the design guidelines group. It's just, we're just trying.
Fine.
What's gonna happen is the architects are gonna come back to us with a set of design guidelines. And then we gotta say, where does that apply? Who's gonna administer it? Which part of it is optional or required? And this is just an attempt to get ready to do it. Am I making sense?
You are, and I'm sorry, it reminded me of something that my husband is doing, which has nothing to do with it, but involves hyperplanes.
It has what?
Hyperplanes.
Hyperplex?
Hyperplanes.
Oh, hyperplanes.
Yes. Never mind. It's, you've got a multidimensional problem here,
Yes,
and it is more than 4.
yes.
Okay. So anything you and the design group can do to bring it down to the 3 dimensions that most of us understand.
Well, if we don't come up with something simple, it's not going to be meaningful. And I think that the concern that I have personally is that a large part of the design guidelines are going to be optional. They're going to be recommendations where we have some language that the town puts forth that says, we really want you to do this. And, you know, that's going to be the best we can do on some of this, because we're going to rely on Emily to give us some guidance on what we can squeeze in zoning only can. That will be for the task force to decide.
Can I just say something about this?
Yeah.
So I think one of the elements of town character that we seem to come to an agreement on is that what makes this town special is not that it's all gray shingles and white trim or white boards with black shutters. It's the variety of styles and building shapes and streetscapes. That's what makes the town charming. So how do you mandate variety? That's the question without dictating what every damn building looks like in the town. So you can have shutters, you can't. We can't do that, but what we can say is we want buildings to be no more than 3 stories high with maybe pitched roofs in general, but maybe some flat roofs, because there are examples of both. And I think one of the things the architects are doing are that they're trying to show examples of this variety so people understand when they see what these guidelines come out looking like, what they're based on.
And the problem is we can celebrate variety, but we all know darn well that there's lots of variety we don't want.
Exactly.
And so, and I don't know how effective we're gonna be in stopping it. That's the puzzle that they've got. It's a puzzle.
The other problem is that a lot of people are worried that we're gonna ruin the town. They're saying, how are you gonna protect us from the town getting ruined? And we said, don't worry, there'll be design guidelines. Optional design.
That's why we think you have some mandatory.
Mandatory.
There have to be some
Some
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, honestly, to some extent, when we talk about town character, we're coming into questions of taste.
You bet.
And very hard to codify taste unless you do something, like an historical district would do, which we can't do. So.
Yeah. Okay. I think
That works is dead.
I do think, though, particularly if you get into the level of detail of materials, you can impart what makes sense for this town. So, you're not gonna be, you don't want necessarily hardy plank on every building.
Right. The trick is how you incorporate that into the design standards and what you can make mandatory.
Yeah.
And what is left to the discretion of the developer.
Without being unreasonable. So you can say, for example, windows have to be taller than they are wide.
Yeah.
As a design, a mandatory design standard.
No strip windows.
That kind of thing. We can do.
Okay, so we have that thing.
Well, then you get,
Then it's very,
then you get into the energy cuts.
Say windows wider than they are tall.
You're gonna have windows this wide and this tall.
Well, whatever. And Sandy, let's go on to outreach.
Yes.
And you want outreach?
I think the design, we're putting off the design, but it is a hard part, but I think a good one, and it's a good group. So, 2 things to make you aware of, and that is that Tiffany has been working on making the website a little clearer and more organized. And step 1 is if you go to the Manchester website now, basically the MBTA, the quick access to the MBTA portion of the site is almost above the fold. So you open up that page, you crank it a little tiny bit, and wham, we're right there. So she succeeded in getting a good thing. And she's begun to consolidate the long list of information into essentially folders. So there'll be more of that, we'll see more of that. Second thing is I wanted to remind you all, there was a document that Tiffany or Gail, I forgot who sent it out. Yeah, Tiffany sent out about the question of the week. And if you haven't, Tiffany's trying to get space each week in the cricket for a question that comes up on social media, people stopping us in the street at Tiffany's book club, whatever, about what is this MBTA stuff all about. And the first question is the document And the answer is the document that you receive. So you're gonna try and do that weekly.
When did Tiffany send it? Recently?
Yes.
I didn't receive it.
A revised version came out today.
I'm not on the list.
Oh, gosh, okay.
I've never received anything.
The revised version doesn't include our desire to protect historic.
Well, I objected to it because it also doesn't include, it says free family by right, which is misleading. It's not free family by right. It's free family by right, the same volume, same footprint, and 5-car parking. So we're not giving, I think we have to be very, very careful with these answers. There's a legitimate concern about NIMBYism. And what I don't understand is, look, the real reason we're not zoning 3-acre lots is because we know exactly what would happen.
45 units.
45 units. That's the reason. So I think it's such a good idea and such a good project. I'm really glad that it's going forward.
The thing, I think what we're trying to do with it, and I think what has tripped up zoning initiatives previously, is that people find things, we explain too much initially. So you go into a very elaborate explanation with all the details, and it just goes right by, it's too much. So through this effort, we're trying to keep it short and as simple as possible. And I think, really thinking about the process, we went to look where there was already some density and where the current zoning almost allowed it, except for the, so that you simply can't explain all the details right off the bat.
All of that is good. I just thought it was misleading to state as a fact that the general district allows 3-family by right with no detail. That's misleading.
It should say 3-family by right in an existing structure.
Okay.
With 5
With
parking
five.
spaces. So, or don't say it at all, which is perfectly okay.
I think it's important to say because people need to know
Yes.
what the story is.
People need to understand
But you're,
that the chain of story that isn't true, and that's really upsetting.
Well, if you say in an existing dwelling with
Existing structure.
existing structure with 5 parking spaces,
With-
then you are telling the story.
Yeah, it's 1.5 parking spaces per unit.
So that's fine.
Well, only if you go to 3. If you went to 2, you wouldn't need the 5.
but two is 11 lots of them.
But I mean, the particular document says 3, that's why I adjusted that.
Okay.
But I don't want to micromanage it, I just would raise a red flag when we put something in writing that is not specifically true.
Right.
Okay,
I
fair
think,
enough.
I think you absolutely have to mention the 5 parking spaces.
Well, or 1.5 per unit.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
So are you gonna round up or are you gonna round
You
down?
round up, you always have to.
Round up, so you're talking 5.
Or you could add 1.5, rounding up.
But since it's only 3, that you could go to,
Mhm.
just say 5.
Right.
Anyway, so there is gonna be a very delicate balance trying to get something that people can understand and getting something that's accurate to a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I understand the concerns. I do think that we're not actually giving a straight answer
Okay,
because we avoided large parcels because it means large developments.
Right.
Well, that's the real answer.
Yes,
it does say that.
yes,
This
but
is
it
not
also says
real
other
estate.
things.
Not what I read.
Uh,
It's not what I read. It had very good language about preserving character and guideline. All of that was spot on.
uh-huh.
But when I read it, my reaction was, well, I was sitting here and I know what my concerns were. And I came in here thinking we should be looking outside in areas that we're not looking at right now. And I changed my mind when I realized what it meant for large scale development.
Uh-huh.
And I think that there is a legitimate reason for people to question what we're doing and what areas we're going to. So if we really want to answer that question, we should tell them the real reason we're not doing it. Now, I'm not the greatest outreach person or the greatest communicator, so if you've got a better way of explaining it, and maybe I'm getting too complicated, but my inclination is to answer the question straightforwardly and not.
Yes, and that's what I tried to do in my letter to the editor last week,
You did a good job.
was to kind of explain general guidelines.
Okay, so you would like to see that edited so that the idea of large parcels and large development comes first.
I did find that Tiffany did send it, she sent it to my, Manchester address.
Okay, so you do.
So I'll take a look at it.
Okay, so take a
I'll
look.
take a look at it.
I'm concerned. The subgroup is sending out this stuff.
Right.
Well, the subgroup is sending it to this group.
Yeah, and what happens after we send your comments? And I have a comment and Richard has a comment and they're in conflict.
Well, then it comes back to everybody. But it's gonna, I mean, it
Well,
will
we
be
can-
quick
we-
responses. if
We
we're
can
gonna-
discuss it right here and come to answer that.
That was my suggestion. Is that it be reviewed. Each of these answers be reviewed by the whole group in a meeting.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, that's kind of the process that we were following.
Can we review it right now? and get
No,
this?
because it was sent at 5:05 p.m. I haven't even looked at it, I didn't even know I had it, because it went to the wrong
You
email.
know, if we're going to follow it, I think you really need to have like 4 or 5 questions on the table.
It's just where I was
Working
going.
ahead and we sit down and hash them out.
So I'll tell you, what, right at the next meeting, let's have 5 questions and 5 draft answers
Okay,
that we can agree on at the next meeting. As a meeting on paper.
Yeah, I think we're being too slow at getting information.
You don't have the luxury anymore.
Right.
You
right,
have
we
to-
don't.
You know, arguing, trying to create another little district in meandering, you don't have that kind of time. I mean,
Right.
think about how long it's gonna take
We
to,
need to just,
for the design guidelines to be reviewed by this entire group.
And the language that's gonna have to get
And
written
the
for the district.
language, that has to get written, because we'll probably have a overlay zone and the details for over by the highway will be something completely different than what we have for the downtown.
well,
area.
and we've
So
talked,
to be reviewing 2 separate.
no, but we've also talked about a sub-district in downtown for that Elm Street area. Talked about a sub-district with different zoning than the rest of it.
Yes, so all that's gonna take a lot of time to get the version.
And we don't, you know, we should have asked her, and I didn't think of it, but I don't really know how long it's gonna take her to write the language. Once we've come to we've given her the material.
I think she's got quite a few templates to start with.
Yeah, I'm sure. Sorry, but
Well, she told us for the last,
Fill in the blanks.
she told us to look at the state template.
Yeah, where is the state template?
I'll look at that, I'll look at that. Someday.
That's why I get that zoning form that really we need to not involve, inform the public, kind of how we got to where we are, we're not there yet, but have a presentation from this group at that meeting, because you gotta get the information out.
At what meeting?
So the planning board and this group are going to have a joint forum on March 2nd.
we've disseminated the maps so far only through what means. I mean, how
They're
many
posting,
people know what districts?
They've been in the cricket, It's been doing a good job.
There are a number of maps online.
Do we have a map online showing the areas under consideration? I don't.
Yeah, it's just found it.
You should go look, there's a list of what, I think like 5, maybe 6 maps.
The problem is we're doing this stuff and we're not getting a quick enough response to be able to get stuff out there.
We're responsible for the vote.
From Emily, when she's doing this stuff.
We're not a lot further along in our areas than we were 2 months ago. We are looking at the same numbers, same areas that we were looking at 2 months ago.
Yeah, but it's been refined. And it's
I
providing
honestly don't think so.
it's providing data for people to understand how they're in compliance. You may have been messing with it for 2 months, but it has not been discussed in a public meeting.
Oh, no, I
And
agree with
it's
that.
not been disseminated.
Yes, I agree with that.
That's
And
what I'm saying.
I'm not, her role is valuable and puts a stamp of, expertise on it. I'm just saying that the numbers we're looking at and the areas we're looking at, we were looking at 2 months ago.
But now we know which ones work and which ones don't.
We knew then.
No, we didn't know.
We didn't,
Okay,
we didn't.
You
know-
did.
we
you're
didn't
right,
know that
you're right, you're right. I thought you had every reason to say who's he. I agree.
It is, and you were wrong.
Actually, I was right.
Most of the time.
Maybe that's where you differ. But make up on it.
No,
Anyway,
we haven't figured
I
out.
guess my point wasn't to dump on Emily at all, because I think she's doing a
to-
great job. My point is, we were really under a lot of pressure. We really are. We gotta come to a geographic decision real fast.
To talk about what's out online, the maps from our January 25th meeting are online. Before we make changes.
That's good.
But to your point, we gotta make a
We
decision.
can't keep adding things
We
to
got, even once we get to the geographic decision, we got a lot of huffing and puffing to do.
Well, do we want to give the planning board a couple of choices, or are we gonna say this is
it.
it?
I think we should,
I think we should barrel on to one solution. And if we have some time left to come up with some other nice little solutions.
I think what we should be doing is coming up with a recommendation.
Yeah.
And then saying, this is why, and
exactly,
these are the other alternatives we looked at.
And why we
this is
didn't
we
Yeah,
should do it.
okay,
I agree.
yeah,
Yes.
okay, fair enough.
I mean, we've done the research. Why not?
And where's the difference to the planning board?
Yeah,
Yeah,
And they're gonna do whatever they're gonna do.
And you gotta show the alternatives that you considered and why you opted for this one.
Right.
exactly.
I don't think you can do any more. I don't think I think that's the best, we should have one recommendation.
Right.
You know, if you say, well, you could do this, or you could do that, you're no further along,
Right.
You're never gonna get a response
right?
from
Which-
townspeople.
Which brings us down to the fact of when are we gonna do that?
Well, it seems like
I thought
we
we had.
kind of know what we're doing here. I think right now.
Well-
If somebody said to me, Car, you gotta submit this to the planning board on Tuesday. I'd say, okay, we can do that.
Well, we can, but I don't know what the areas.
I don't think I don't agree.
I'm not ready to,
I'm not ready to sign.
What other changes do you wanna make?
but there is a big one.
We got this.
We
these
need
options
Emily to
tonight.
come back to us at the next meeting to,
At the
the
next meeting.
reactions to our
I actually,
conversation today, and then we lock
and
the districts.
I think this is where I disagree. I don't understand that. I don't think we're gonna learn anything from our next meeting.
Oh, I think we will.
Well, here's why I
I
say,
gotta learn about this other option that is gonna be modeled, then maybe we can decide, is that worth pursuing or no?
well, then what we can do in the meantime is we can decide exactly, we've got 5 options and 10 different zones here. We can decide now, all right, if that works, what are we gonna do? And if it doesn't work, what are we gonna do? So that when that meeting ends, we have a solution and a geographic decision, and we're not going on to yet another. I mean,
Well,
I think we're,
I mean, the thing I think we don't understand at all, looking at these numbers, is what is the Matt Gurley option, because we're depending on that.
What do you
For a big number.
I know what that is.
Well, all the numbers, final unit capacity, 369, final unit capacity, 443.
Sandy, what I'm talking about is making a geographic decision. Okay, we know it's gonna be Mac Gurley if it's not Gordon. But then when it comes to the downtown, we know we have a couple of solutions that we know work. Now, we have one other solution that you brought up tonight, which I guess we could evaluate and decide. And the truth is that that's a geographic decision. It's really doesn't have much to do, as far as I can see, with anything that she's gonna bring back to us. It's either gonna be 5 acres and it works for them. And we gotta come up with 15 acres, and we could do that very quickly.
We could do it very quickly by just saying we're not gonna think about anything else.
Right.
I think there's merit, if that is 5 acres, in reducing the change to Pine Street. So that it,
But that I think we already know we can reduce the change to Vine Street without that. That's
okay, maybe
calculations we need back.
maybe we could move the line from Central Street from 2 houses to 3 houses. So that going north from Central Street.
So our next meeting is in 2 weeks.
Yep, right. And then I think that's
You know,
a
we
decision
could-
point.
I'm just concerned that we end next meeting. We still,
Have 2 more options we want to test.
we're still worrying about options. And the truth is that we can measure the size of these areas right now. We don't happen to have them tonight, but it's about an hour's worth. And once we know that, we're gonna know all that we need to know, to decide which of those zones we want to take. That's all we need. We don't really need Emily to come back. I would like to think that we could find some way to have a decision pretty much in our mind, so that when she does come back, unless we find something that really shocks and surprises us or blows us away, we're ready to go.
admire your optimism.
Gotta be optimistic, because we don't have a choice.
No, we got time, we have time. It's not like we're going down one track. We're going down 3 tracks at once. So it's not like nothing happens with design guidelines while we figure out the geography.
Right.
And we're not doing community outreach.
So do you think we will be able at the next meeting to decide that we have chosen the geography?
I think that's a great goal.
I don't like the sound of it.
Well, I can't, we don't know.
It's a great goal, and you have to be careful not to, I mean, you have a month.
Well, okay, so I know I'm giving you lead on this, but we have to take this, once we come to a decision on the geography, now we've got to go out to the public and say, we really know what we're gonna do now. We really do know this. How much time do we have between now?
How much time do you need? I mean, you need 6 months probably, but. To
The
get
more, the more the better.
yeah, the more the better.
Okay, I'll
What's the date of the next meeting?
Good question.
So look at the schedule. On the schedule.
I think it's
We like
actually,
it.
So I have it down,
It's the 29th,
29th of February, that's almost 3 weeks from now.
correct,
uh,
because
Yeah.
it's,
Because that's the school week vacation.
Talk to me about those things at school.
No, a bunch of people aren't gonna be here.
I'm not gonna be here, of course.
there was a problem.
I don't have to worry about this.
Okay, so we've got a lot of work to do. Would you like the rest of the outreach report?
Sorry.
Folks.
Yeah, sorry.
Please.
Okay, so questions of the week, I've heard some comments.
We're gonna be
earlier.
gathering more questions.
Yes, because although
I have a little bit of worry about wanting to get something out, so
We can't get anything out
Until
until we've
everybody-
all agreed. We can't agree to it tonight because we
Right.
didn't get information.
Right,
About
I
what
understand that,
advance
Sarah,
to
but if you get something that you like before, do we need the whole meeting, since we've discussed it tonight? Do we need the whole meeting to decide before it gets printed?
Yes, the final consent.
You bring open meeting rules if you try and
Sure.
get an agreement
Oh.
on that issue.
Should we try and have, if I can get that other district model of Emily within a week? Try and have another meeting next week before February vacation.
Without Emily. Not a bad idea.
Well, that's what I was going to suggest, but you all scared me off.
No,
Oh, and then you can review it. That's a short meeting.
I've already made other plans.
Oh,
I mean, we keep getting these schedules. I'm completely rearranging my schedule of other meetings to meet these schedules. So I'm just not that flexible. I have 3 meetings a week.
Okay, well, hopefully the discussion about it, good try. Good try, all right. So that will be an item to be discussed and
Actually, I
decided.
have an idea, but if
Yeah,
we get Emily to send us that modeling next week.
Yep.
And we can spend 2 weeks thinking about
Looking at
it.
it. Yes,
Coming
Yes,
with some really careful thinking about the 29th. I think would be.
that would be really helpful, Chris.
Let's
That's a great idea.
schedule a meeting of the subcommittee that we had before, that was looking at the areas in the beginning, to try to work together and come up with some recommendations.
no, I think we're at the point where we need the task force to do it.
Well, the task force is gonna have to do it.
I think we need input from everyone at this point, because everyone has looked at it, and I don't think it should go back to the zoning subcommittee.
I would agree. But I think your suggestion about, it's been very frustrating to
To not get
hear,
output.
to not get output beforehand. I mean, to sit and look at this document and it's a bit of a puzzle.
So let's see if we get Emily to give us a.
That would be great.
Because, you know, one of the things that's bothering me is kind of the one I'm looking at the most. She said didn't meet, but yet she may have just needed to add the Mac plus the girly to it.
Yeah, I mean, to not,
Option 2.
to not see that until tonight is really.
Yeah,
I think I've finally figured out what's supposed to be so much. I was concerned back in November that we were gonna find ourselves in a situation where we were spending too much time going back and forth between the consultant and ourselves in making decisions, and that we needed some way to work directly on the database, directly with the data, so that we could reach conclusions and do things on a more expeditious manner. And here we are, stuck again. And the problems that we have now to resolve are tiny compared to what we faced when we first laid out these total districts. We're just doing incremental work here. And I think it would be very helpful if we could find some way to move forward with all. I understand what you're saying, Sarah, and I understand how important it is for the entire task force to come into agreement on anything we do. But if we can get some alternatives put in front of people in a way that they can understand before then, I think it would be very helpful.
So why don't we get this thing is gonna be updated to another district of it? And why don't we go through and score each one ourselves?
Can you,
Well, because we're really close to this data and we're talking about making slight changes here and slight
No,
changes there.
I agree, but we have not applied the guiding principles. We just, in our gut, we say, okay, yeah, this one's, you know, let's apply the guiding principles to these and then come up and see how much we agree on them. The next meeting.
if you go back to
Yeah.
Emily, can you ask her an option 2
Yep.
to switch out Mac and girly for girly eye care? Because she had it as not conforming. But if you do the Mac and Gurley instead of Gurley Eye Care, I think you're there. And that's the one with the smallest amount of acreage within the half mile.
Oh, so she has met with her.
No, she has just Gurley Eye Care,
On which, yeah.
Something, Ariana.
8. She has just Gurley Eye Care, and I think if you switched it out with Mac and Gurley,
Oh, I see.
then you're gonna comply. And that's the only one that's the least acreage in downtown.
Option 2, with some perhaps changes as we've discussed tonight, is the option that we most favor.
Right,
That's the last two.
yes.
And it will be very interesting to find out exactly how much of Lower Pine Street we really have to take. To get to 14.7
Right.
acres. I suspect not much.
And remember, you know, it's like as they say about the perfect and the good, it's okay if we're over a little bit. It's okay. Let's not beat ourselves up. And I know we want to be very close to 15 units per acre. That's fine. But you know, what if we ended up 16.5 units per acre?
It's not,
It's not the end of
that's
the
not
world.
the problem. That's not a problem.
The
It's
acreage
just
is
moving lines.
Right.
It's fine.
It's not-
We can dial that into exactly what we.
Sure. But what are we
Okay,
haranguing about?
What we're worrying about is that we don't have, that
We
we
don't
don't
have-
have it in front of us.
I don't have the option in front of me, which is the one I want.
So we're gonna get that delivered to us hopefully in a week.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we've got to send her models. We got to, not the models, we got to send her the geographic selection, because she's
Yeah.
not gonna make it.
right.
And so they're doing it, right?
I'm doing it.
Okay.
Great.
How do you deal with, I'm sorry, how do you deal with, her modeling does not take into consideration the current zoning, which is 5 units, 5 parking spaces? How do we deal with that issue?
It doesn't matter for anything except for the general district model that she came up with, that last one where she, as I understand it, that last thing that she came up with where she was gonna try a deal where we use existing properties at 3 family, that's the only one that pertains to.
She's including parking and all the others.
The others have nothing to do with what's there now or what the
Yeah, I
zoning.
understand that.
Okay,
When you say the others, what do you mean?
All these other options,
Yeah, okay.
where she's modeling it,
Yeah,
she's including the 1.5 parking spaces per unit.
okay.
And just making, and all of it that she has to do is, all there has to be is enough open space to fit it.
Okay, but what about the general district?
Well, the general makes an overlay district where it doesn't, it's just gonna,
The,
the same rules are gonna apply.
the option 7 that she did,
I think that's what you're talking about, isn't it? Yeah, option 7.
Yeah, that was
option
just,
7 was 3 units in an existing structure. And that did not take into consideration parking.
I thought we,
Something you wanted to get rid of, not do that for our discussion, not do the general district, so shouldn't we just wipe out the number 7?
Well, I think it's important to
You
show,
gotta start making some
No,
decisions.
we need to show it because people ask what can happen under existing zone.
so what that shows is we can do it,
Right,
probably do it, but it's gonna mean 900 units in the LCD.
right.
So,
nobody wants.
under somewhat existing.
some,
Can we go back to that now?
that's, well, let's,
I'd like to finish,
Yes.
if I may.
yes, yes, yes,
Jay,
please.
did you finish your question though, Denny?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Another one.
Okay. Well, good.
Go ahead.
Gar and Chris are gonna be at the Manchester Club on February 15th, next week, day after Valentine's Day. You two are invited if you'd like. It's a men's club.
What is it?
February 15th, 6:30.
You have to give them your names. Very exclusive.
It's a,
It'd be good if you could.
it is a great cross section of the town.
Okay, where's Big Elm?
Well,
The
the
Legion.
cross section of half the town.
A little late for that.
Oh, thank you. I stand corrected. I stand corrected. We did make a density walk video that should be posted online, basically for people who want to get a sense sitting there looking at their computer. Tiffany is trying to find a place at Town Hall
where both the FAQ and the density walk handout can be placed, so people who come into town hall will see those two things.
If they take away the, finance committee report about last annual town meeting, the space in the front.
Okay. That's a big, good tip. And then Chris has already mentioned the joint planning board and MBTA event on March 2nd to go over what current zoning, with the idea being that there'll be some sort of overview presentation of the current
So we're
zoning.
making
And
it
then
simple.
people, yes, and people will then break out into zones. Basically, so people will. learn.
Where's that? gonna be?
At the high school, we're not sure where.
Cafeteria. No, the
Library.
Learning hall.
Yes, really, we go to Irving County, the library. And those, we don't have a time yet. I don't, do you have any update? No, okay. But the day of this March 2nd is the day, probably in the morning, 10 o'clock is when we typically go on things.
Okay, this is.
That's a Saturday.
6:30. And then there are two other things that haven't been settled finally, a meeting between the task force and environmental boards here in town, and a meeting that we're trying to do with the downtown improvement committee, with sort of a business roundtable. So reaching out, giving people the basic story about what the whole process is. Trying to get everybody in as much as we can in the same position, understanding the process, what the law is, what we've done, so that by the time we get to talk about specific zones, we've got, you know, a number of people in town pretty well educated about the situation. That's,
Would it be worth, maybe we just have this as a question for in our 5 questions? There are some areas that we have considered and rejected, and just a write-up of
Why?
why. And, you know, the Thunderbolt Hill area. Yep. Raymond Street.
Country club,
Country Club.
Abbey club, county club. With its 2,700 units.
That really hits it right between the eyes, I think. That's a suggestion.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have to have that in some formal fashion anyway, at some point, because when we take it to the planning board,
And I think it needs to say how many units could have been built on that. You know,
That's what
I'm not
worries
sure.
me about the back and Burley site. I know option 7.
that's why we're not considering option 7.
Well, but then you go to 443.
yeah,
I
the
mean, I
numbers.
think you have to figure out how you're going to explain that.
well, this is what I don't understand, because when I looked at the model, there are options to set maximum number of units, options to set.
Yeah.
That's why I asked for the model. I don't understand why it's that way.
And that's why she said she had adjusted some. Back units.
But they're still high.
Well, it's,
I never
it's,
could
You're trying to
figure
get to the
out
15.
it's, the
Oh,
option 7 was to get to the 15.
Option 7 is,
Is a conceptual exercise.
It's all getting to,
you know, I don't like care.
Okay, are we done
Okay,
with the average?
I'm done.
All right.
then you have another question.
Okay.
I don't anymore. I remember it, but it's not wrong.
Sorry, any restrictions on your stuff? Who wants to go home?
All right, we're almost done here. So there were minutes sent out, everybody have a chance to review the minutes.
Yes,
I move we approve the minutes.
no, there's an error in January. It says that the density requirement is 14 units per acre.
Oh, okay, with that, would you take
Yes,
that?
with that correction,
It's a
I
very,
move we approve the
it's
minutes.
a very serious, in the second meeting, because my name is omitted from the
Oh, my God.
I already wrote, she's already finished.
We don't want to have you missing, because that's.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Yes.
Any other business?
Oh, wait, public comment, we have public comment. Do we have any public who'd like to ask questions? Let's see.
You gotta click on just. No, if somebody raises their hand, we should see them.
Okay.
There's a.
There are two chats there.
Hi, this is Christine. I have a quick question. At the last meeting, you had discussed the economic feasibility study. I didn't hear that. I was maybe a few minutes late. I didn't hear that mentioned tonight.
Yes, we are pursuing it, Christina. I talked to Emily about it. We're getting a proposal from her partner firm to do the,
So you're still waiting for that? You're still waiting for the proposal? Is that what I heard?
yes, that's right.
All right. And then I just have another comment. I guess on the golf course. I did hear the amount of units that would be built out on that, but just as a general concern. So if you're taking the Gordon College land and going through all this effort and time to take 20 acres off of that, why wouldn't you do the same towards any other development or any parcel, including the golf course?
Because you have to have the landowners willing to, divide it, and I don't believe the county club would be willing to divide their land.
Has someone just spoken to them?
But
Has someone discussed it with them?
Well, I guess we could. I'd be happy to call. Who should I call?
But, no, the chairman of the, board of governors, I suppose.
President of the club, I suppose.
Yeah.
all right,
Well, I will call them to see.
All right, thanks.
18 holes.
Any other public comments, questions? Any other administrative matters that you would like to bring up on the agenda?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Excellent meeting. Well done.
No, I mean, it's all too free flowing, but I thought we could make things. No, that's okay.
You hit the end button.
Yeah.
Interesting.